everyone. Um, there were a couple more people who RSVP'd, but I just figured we'd start now. Um, and they can start rolling in. We did have a lot of people say that they might not be able to make it. Um, but I didn't want to cancel, since we already rescheduled this. So I'm sending over the agenda now, so that we can start discussing and reviewing it. And minutes were put up today. They were really late, so I think that it's okay if we um hold off on meeting minutes approval until next month. Because I've been working on the 6-month report that we have to submit. Um, and we'll talk a little bit about that, as well as some big picture planning. Um, So the report is very much similar to, has the same structure as the one before. And I think where I want that 6-month report for us to focus on is in the goals. Because the last time that I wrote that report, it was just taking what we had talked about in all of our subcommittees and saying, this is what we would like to see. But I think that it would be great if we reviewed those goals and figured out if there's a department in the city that we should be connecting about this if we aren't already, and to talk through some budget and resources and things like that. And then for the big picture planning, it's in there. It says trails, community engagement, and goals. And in our next larger commission meeting, we also have an open discussion about markers, because in our last meeting, we talked about markers and it was a hot debate. But Kathy, who's, the new director of historic preservation, thought that it would be a great idea for us to think through markers and like a prototype for a marker and what that could look like, having seen like the Freedom Trail markers, the Black Heritage Trail markers, the Bostonian Society ones, the ones that Arts and Culture oversees, and go from there and maybe build out online something that we would be okay with just to have as like maybe a special 251, maybe a 400 one, and then maybe a prototype that we would be giving our approval to for the creation of a longer term marker program, that might exist in conjunction with the arts and culture one, and the parks ones that already exist. And then the other thing for trails was that in our last meeting we were reviewing the timeline, but what came out of that conversation was an interest in a community-based process for engagement for community-created trails, and I thought that was a great idea. So I'm working with community engagement to kind of launch a open call, so we can review that. But what I really wanted us to do today was to discuss, once that is out in the world, which will take some time, what this subcommittee wants to do in terms of reviewing someone's trail, right? What kind of infrastructure do we want to set up so that when someone has an idea for a trail, has talked it through, has some places that they have in mind, what this subcommittee can do in terms of providing them a guideline for how many places we think makes the most sense, how many is too much, um, how we want them to, how we would provide support so that they can get like historians to vet this, to provide some resources for them. So I was hoping, because I know we have some expertise, of course, in trails and in markers, how we might help the process along once we get started with that open call. So we can talk about that, and then I can also show you guys the very basic open call that we have started with. We took some inspiration from that Unmonument one, but it's like 2 pages right now, and it's definitely worth being looked at and fleshed out. But yeah, I just wanted to get that conversation started with you guys. Oh, okay, no worries, Suzanne. So I guess my first question would be, what you guys think makes sense for you guys how it what would make sense for you guys when it comes to interacting with community members who bring forward a trail. Like what would that look like? And what infrastructure would make sense when someone might present their idea? Mhm. Or what could I do ahead of that so that they'd be prepared?
Yeah, it's a great question, Hennessy. Hi, Suzanne.
Hi.
I so it feels to me like so it's easier to think about how we might respond to community members who want to see uh, a a building or a site in that matters to them recognized with an official marker of some sort. Because I think we can set criteria, and then our role, or the city's role wherever it's ultimately housed, would be to provide a kit of materials that makes it really easy for people to understand, like, how can they go about researching this, what
Mhm.
material would need to be provided, who's going to vet it, like what is like we can be empowering people in that way. And obviously there needs to be some selection process so that, like, not we don't have 10,000 markers around the city, which may be too many. Trails is more complicated because I think ultimately uh, trails are valuable in that they connect different points of interest. Because just a sea of points of interest is really hard for people to navigate. The problem is that if we allow too many trails, we're going to end up with the same thing. Like,
Mhm.
we have a sea of trails now, and nobody knows which one is of interest and where they should begin. So, I maybe the thing for us to do is to engage community stakeholders who are interested in seeing trails in their neighborhood, and try to understand how we could uh, give shape to a set of trails that expands beyond the ones that we ultimately, I think, that we already have, without overwhelming the public with too many. And it feels to me like it's really hard for us to sit here and say, what we want to see is, we want to see 3 trails, and this is what we think the priorities ought to be. I think we should be responsive to ideas that are already in circulation,
Mhm.
and we can identify if there's a gap, and see if we might be able to find stakeholders who would want to lean in there. But it feels like we have to be more selective, and probably more support is needed in identifying what trails would make sense.
I
Yeah, that's,
agree. Nat, do you mind if I interject, Hennessy?
no, no worries.
Okay. I think what we've been talking about, and we're not always all on the same call, so I mean, this is difficult, but we have talked about this a number of times and have thought that if a specific neighborhood, so do this by neighborhood, and possibly working with Main Streets and ONS and put out a call to, do you want, not do you want, but float the idea of, historic trails in each of the neighborhoods so people feel like they're, and should be part of celebrating the history of each of the neighborhoods. But that we as a group shouldn't be saying, oh, this place should have a trail and this place should have a trail. It should be like an offering. Like, do you
Mhm.
want to create a trail? Like, there's a historic trail in Roxbury already exists in some level, and it be more of like a walking, like a self-guided walking tour kind of thing, unless somebody from Main Streets or the community wants to make it more. And like you said, we could give them the tools on possibly how to make it, more of a trail, like, I hate to say, like the Freedom Trail or something like that.
Yeah, I agree on in several points. I'm taking notes. Yeah, that it is easier to respond to people who want to see a building celebrated. And for that, I think that's what the Landmarks Commission is for, you know, that it's like if it's a specific building, then that's a process you do with them. But if it's like yeah, a neighborhood, then we can work with that instead, and that feels a bit more fruitful. And I was actually going through the Boston 200 master plan just to see what they were working on. And I mean, I think they have a lot of trails that were excessive. I'm not excessive, but they had like a water trail, which I don't even really know what that means. But so they had like an multiple architectural trails. They definitely had like an Irish history trail. They had a children's trail. But things that made sense, like the Irish history trail made sense. The Italian history trail made sense. Even the architecture one, but it wasn't one, it was like four. They also had tours separately, but I don't think that's something that we're, you know, talking about here. That thing
Who's
that's
this walk? Is this Walk Boston or who's it?
no, this is the Boston 200 master plan. This is
Oh,
Centennial,
okay.
right?
Sorry.
No, no worries. But so theirs was, I think they just, I don't know what their process of selection was. And that's fine, but they had very disparate ideas and many different kinds of options. And I think that it's fine if we say we are just looking for a neighborhood trail. Um, I think that one, I think it'll still be controversial because some neighborhoods, right? Dorchester's massive. And I think that people would be like, well, if you only do one part of Dorchester, you're missing another part. You're ignoring a history somewhere in this neighborhood, right? So I think we'd have to flesh out what that would look like as well. Because I think that there is still, right, there's still, like we mentioned last time, some power, right, in the decision of what is in a trail and what's not in a trail. Um,
Is there something to be said for working with each of the historical societies in each of these neighborhoods?
I mean, I think that it makes sense to do so. I also think that I don't know, it does make sense to do that. And then I also would consider that there are other organizations that might want to collaborate with them, which is fine. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think that we'd have to figure out how that works because just collaborating with one potential group leaves out a lot of other input.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to say we should open up lines of communication with all the historical societies, but I think we should be mindful that in many communities there is dissonance between what the historical society people think is important about the town's history and what other residents of the town think or the neighborhood think is important. That's certainly a dynamic in the town that I live in, and it causes frustration because the historical site is putting out things saying like this is our official history, and the residents are like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
So I don't think we want to get bound up in those. So I would say we wouldn't. I wouldn't want to see us take the historical society as the only vehicle for getting community input.
Oh yeah, no. I was thinking that they could be like the ones who lead the way,
Mm.
because we can't do it.
Yeah. Yep.
Or someone else in the community, lead the way. Go ahead, Kara.
I was gonna
Right.
say, could we also then like charge historical societies with actually doing better outreach to communities? I was in another meeting and someone was talking about the mass cultural like kind of standards for like supporting programs that they do, like there's like already a template for that. And one of that is like, if you're doing these projects and programs, or if you want access to like funding or help in certain ways, like you need to also show that you're like in alignment with what it means to like really serve your community members and like a diverse community. And it's just like best practices. And I think we could kind of like, say to them that like this is something that the state has already have standards for in terms of cultural practices and historical outreach. And like we want to see y'all partnering with people and making sure other voices are in the room.
I
Yeah,
like that idea.
I agree. I think that it would make a lot of sense for us to say we would like to see the trails that you guys are working on, and we'd like to give it that stamp of approval. And we can add some caveat to that we'd like to see also in maybe we come up with a proposal template. Maybe that's too much, I don't know, right? But that we'd like to see how they're going to be adopting those practices and how they're going to be engaging with the larger community to see what they're also interested in.
I have a question as it relates to the 250th versus the 300th, or sorry, the 400th. Missing a whole century there, which is not good. It feels to me like the amount of work that goes into thoughtfully shaping a trail and marking all of the sites on it and whatnot, but also like the breadth of the city's history, it might be better to solicit proposals for trails that would be part of Boston's 400th
Yeah.
celebration, and that we might, as we think about the 250th, think about prioritizing marking locations in communities that have a tie to the, to the events of the revolution, or to the sort of cascade of unfinished struggles that flows out of the revolution, in some way tying it to the, that sort of piece of the story. There's a much broader fabric that people might want to explore as we approach the 400th. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? I don't know
No,
if it makes sense.
it does. I agree 100%. I think that this is a project that if we shape it, it'll definitely be great and launchable for the 400th. Especially if it's neighborhood focused or community focused, it makes a lot of sense for it to be about the fabric of Boston. And that we can do this like plaquing program for those. And that's why I say we can maybe like see what the plaques from the Bostonian Society look like. And I mean, we know, but still, and compare them to the one from the Black Heritage Trail and the ones that Arts and Culture do, just because we
Yep.
can then come to this conversation with our own and say, hey, this is like a special edition one. And these will be for the 250th. And I think that that opens up like two avenues in that we are looking for a longer term trail creation where, you might you might come up with these on your own, or you might use what's already been uh highlighted in this like 250th project as a starting point. But I would agree. I think that makes a lot of sense for us to start with this one thing and open it up to a longer term, larger project, because I mean the amount of research and labor that it'll take to create trails, it will take a significant amount of time.
Hennessy, by the way, in reading the minutes from the last meeting, I was reminded that I had promised to send you a list of all of the markers the Bostonian Society had put up. So I did just send that
Okay,
right
perfect.
before the meeting
Okay.
as an attachment. So, and it dates from before my time at the Bostonian Society, but there is a whole folder with a whole bunch of files and information. So I can, at some point you and I could do screen share and we just like open up
Yeah,
the files and look at
that'd
them
be
and
great.
see what's
Yeah.
in there. Um, Great.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, we can now. I mean, just because we're talking about it, but we can also later. I don't know. I think it makes a lot of sense to talk about the markers, but then that being said, um, I'd love to talk about how you guys think that we should do that open call, um, for those markers. Let me just see if I still have this open call that I had before.
And see, I'd just like to flag that there's probably a question that we need to resolve, and I think probably that you all on the staff side need to resolve, about what can the city offer uh, to those who want to bring something forward, right? So a set of guidelines and support, but like who's covering the cost of developing the marker and mounting it? Is that going to be a city thing, or is that like communities are going to have to raise the funds to do that themselves? For trails, like can we think about like how will we give visibility to the trails? Will there be a single point of entry on the city's website, and so that all of the trails are sort of indexed and easy to find, and wayfinding is easy for like will there be marketing support to help get the word out, or are these things just going to like languish and nobody's going to know about them? So
Oh.
as we put out a call, being able to say, hey, and here's how we're going to help is going to be important in getting, I think, good outcomes.
I agree. I mean, I would never want to jump the gun and say, hey, here's the open call, and never and be like, and then not tell people how we would be supporting that project. We're just saying, hey, we're interested in seeing what you want to do, and then leaving you out to dry. I agree. And I think that's part of why, um, Kathy came up with the idea of making a prototype plaque, because then we can sell that, right? We can say, hey, city, we think that this is something that should be invested in. And we think that this is something that if you want community engagement, if you want this process to be taken seriously, then we need to have a product, something that people can see that is tangible, that they are willing to say, okay, now that I know something will exist, if I do this, I'm willing to put in the labor. So I agree that these are questions that we need to resolve. Um, yeah. I mean, okay, and that's fine. I'm wondering how, as as we think about also how to resolve this, I'm wondering how we put out that open call, or how we engage about the 250th and those landmarks, maybe in conjunction with the Landmarks Commission. Since they are already getting people who are petitioning for locations and for buildings and structures. Maybe we can utilize their existing infrastructure, even though their infrastructure's, it's long. It's it takes a long time to get a study report done, because it's funding. I mean, it's a process, but we could potentially use that infrastructure to say, hey, if you want to do it, here's a great way that you can do it, and you can flag this a 250th thing, and you'll have potential more eyes on this project as we flag it. So I don't know what we think about that, because
I guess I would advocate for multiple channels of distribution, because I think you're going to find the same thing with the Landmarks Commission, all the neighborhood commissions. There's going to be a subset of the neighborhood that is highly engaged, or even would tune in and know what that commission is in their neighborhood. But we probably want to make sure that people outside of that cohort are aware. So I think we talked last time about whether we might also ask either the members of the council who are, have districts and have infrastructure for communicating with constituents to support outreach, and also the Office of Neighborhood Services. And I mean, there's good infrastructure for engagement in those areas, I think.
yeah, I agree. I mean, for the Landmarks Commission, I don't even mean outreach, even though it would be helpful for the Office of Historic Preservation at large altogether to do outreach. I mean, more so for the structure of when we get there, potentially, of people saying, I'd like to look into this.
Oh, right. Who
that-
captures the
right,
submissions? And
exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
You.
I think
Right.
somewhere
I
in the
yeah,
Office of
Historic
Historic
Preservation.
Preservation seems like the right place for that, right?
Yeah.
Well, I can see this having some legs to it with, with multiple departments, being involved, and community. And it would be something that I think that the mayor would announce, along with a number of, like I said, other department heads.
Mhm.
And, city councilors from, this is a citywide initiative, and it's definitely inclusive because it's citywide, which would be great. But we definitely need to have all the ducks in the row before, like you said, Hennessy, you don't want to just say, oh, here's this thing, and then figure it out, and we don't know what we're doing. We want to have a plan in place to say, this is what's going to happen, and this is how people are going to be able to participate in this.
Okay. Yeah. So it sounds like we should do some internal work first, Kathy and I have already discussed it, and we we have it, like I said, I don't know if you heard Suzanne when I mentioned it, but we have it on our larger commission meeting to discuss plaques, or markers, just because we think that at this rate, it would be great if the commission recommends that we should create a longer term marker program that could live inside of the Office of Historic Preservation, that works in conjunction with other departments, as a lasting output of the commission and of the commemorations, but that um we also want something to exist now for people to engage with, so that it's not just like, oh, and then we created this department, but it's like the department was created because we saw the value in the project that we thought was worth doing.
The other thing, and I know we've talked about this before, that Amari and Esther and team, they had the person who presented at the Arts and Culture Summit
Mm.
about the Roxbury history.
Yeah, Dart
Um,
Adams. Yeah.
what's that?
It
Sorry,
was
I-
Dart,
Dart
right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things he was saying is that the sites that he was talking about that sounded really neat, and I wish I lived to see them, or was in Boston at that time, don't exist anymore. So they've been replaced by a apartment building or whatever it is. So a plaque there might not be as, as interesting to somebody because they're looking at an apartment building. But could there be an app or something like that that has an old photograph of what the place looked like? Because I'm sure the community members have those types of documentation of what was there before, so that people could actually go up and say, oh, this is what it looked like, and this was where, the barber shop was, and the grocery store that everybody went to pick up things for their mom, and they
Yeah.
everybody knew each other,
Yeah, I mean, I went to a Mellon event a long time ago. I don't remember what it was called anymore. But it was around monuments and commemoration, and people were giving their presentations about their projects, and one person um it was like creating an augmented reality like app where you could go to a place that had something there, and you hold up your, like Pokemon Go, you hold up your phone and then you see what it used to look like. It recreates it. So that's crazy expensive, of course.
Kathy did that. You should talk with Kathy about that.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Good
Yeah,
to-
she did that with the Old Corner Bookstore.
Okay, good to know.
Mhm.
That could also be an option that is engaging and interesting.
It's also possible, just at a lower uh, threshold for cost, to consider photographs being a space for photographs being included on the plaque design. Um,
Oh, yeah.
but all of that leads to, like, there will be probably a need for research support. I mean, I think there's probably plenty of folks who are interested in doing these projects in their neighborhoods who have all the materials readily at hand, but others may need help understanding how to find those materials. I wonder if it's worth thinking about talking with folks at, like, the UMass Boston Public History Program, or some of the other universities around, see if there's, like, opportunities to harness um, folks with some training who would, like, an internship or a practicum might be, like, some additional capacity we could throw at this, because I think there's not going to be multiple staff lines living in the Office of Historic Preservation dedicated to this, right? So bye, Karen.
Sorry,
Oh.
good to see you briefly twice in a row, Nat and
In a
Suzanne.
day,
Good to
in
see the
less
rest
than
of you.
24
Yeah.
hours. Yeah.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye,
See
Karen.
ya.
Oh. Okay, Kathy just emailed me a while ago asking for the link, so she might be able to join us. I just saw it, but yeah, I agree. I think that's a great recommendation for us to say, if we could create internships from this so that people who are interested in doing research have the ability to do that. I think that's a great way to work with
And
this. And
and sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that, like, Jane Becker at UMass Boston would be just, a really great contact. Her students have worked with, I think, a lot of our organizations.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
many
they're always
organizations.
looking for projects too, so.
And they also, I think about a year ago, I sat in on their class with them reimagining what the upstairs of Faneuil Hall could look like, and it was
Right.
incredible. And so I think that would be really, really, really awesome to have that pairing. I also think too, the thing about plaques is that I think your point, Suzanne, is really important about, like, how useful is it? But I think it's also about what we imagine a plaque to look like. So this could also be that time to also reimagine what these plaques are and what they can look like, because there's the Harriet Jacobs House in Cambridge, and it had this little small, like you would just walk by it and completely miss it. And I think that that's part of the frustration there, is that often they're put up and they're just kind of small, you don't see it. And so one of the things that we could also do is like lead a charge and like really reimagining what marking a space looks like, both with technology but also in person.
I agree.
That's
I like
great.
that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to get off camera for a minute. I'm sorry.
No worries. Okay, so that being said, I know that we're, still talking about this and having this conversation. I figure we might look at the report real quick and see if that also, inspires any additional ideas within us.
Hennessy, just one thought before I forget it, just to get in the notes. Just thinking about where photographs of the city are housed, we should be thinking about Boston Public Library, which has a fantastic photographic collection. And I know that there's other organizations as well, but since it's a city institution, maybe we want to talk with folks there about how they might see themselves being involved with the project.
No, that's a great point. I mean, I think the Timelines Archives and Curricula group would be really useful for some of the things that we've been discussing in terms of like archives. I've been saying that I think there's a lot of digitization to be done. And I think that would make a lot of the research accessible and easier to find. And then I think if we could even with BPS do some internships geared at younger students so that they can get a taste of what that looks like before they enter college, that could be like a huge output of this. So
Absolutely.
there's potential for some collaboration there. Okay, so I will share this report. I'll share my screen really quickly. It looks basically the same as the one from before. I'm still working on it. Can you guys see it? Okay. So I'm still working on it. The updates were similar to last time, except I explained that there were some people who have stepped down, which is good to know as we're going into this January, because the ordinance policy update is also being read by a city councilor now, and I don't think that they'll be putting it to a vote in January, probably February, hopefully, but it is being reviewed now. So I think this is a good time to say, hey, we are missing some members. Here's some recommendations for new members, and that way everything gets through all at the same time. Okay, vision stays the same. The goals, I kind of separated them now and I put them in a chart. I'll zoom in. In the past, it was just goals, where like these are the things that we've been talking about. We've been discussing a website, branding. We've been discussing, parades, engagement, official beverages, things like that. And in this one, I was hoping that we could be a little bit more thorough in saying, we still want these things, but 6 months later, we think we need to start identifying organizations that we could collaborate with, departments that we need to collaborate with, and potential budgets around it. Because I think that if we could get this in at the same time as the ordinance change, it would be great for all the city councilors to review the ordinance and this and say, okay, there are things that we need for something to work, for there to be an impact. So I'll just go through them. This was mostly events, exhibits, and trails, the first one, but I think the ones from Timelines, Archives, and Curricula also matter, but I'll go through them. So a website, I think maybe fleshing that out, maybe the Commemoration Commission website is one thing, but if someone's like, oh, Boston 250 .com, that doesn't exist, and I don't know if that's something that we want to have as a separate existing thing, or if something that we want like the domain to reroute us to the commemoration. I think that's something that we have to discuss. Branding, I know that the city has been working on some branding. We have an update soon, so I'm not sure where they are with it, but so I'll wait on them to say, here's the branding that we have. Hopefully they can present it to us.
Yeah, I
don't-
saw a hint of it. Alex presented to a group that I am part of yesterday, and I thought it looked really nice. It looked like they've made a lot of progress.
Great, okay. Suzanne?
I'm sorry. So I apologize. I am in the middle of a family crisis right now, so I'm very sorry. But so there is branding that has been worked on, and they're presenting it to people, Nat?
Yeah, I mean, so the group of sites who are partnered with Boston National Historical Park had reached out to Alex Meadow to ask if he could just share the same presentation that he had given to this group about, the thinking that is going on over in the partnerships office and mayor's office. And then he updated it and included a slide or two that showed what their current thinking about branding is. So I don't know that it is finalized, but he just wanted to indicate that that's something that has been identified already as a need and that they are working on it.
Hennessy, have you seen it?
I haven't seen the updates yet, no.
All right.
I don't have the deck, so I can't show you, but yeah, they had clearly identified there needs, like, we need to create a thing that is Boston 250 that has its own look and feel.
Yeah, I know I'm working with him on it, and this is why I'm like a little bit concerned because
Oh,
I'm the one who has the money to promote
I
Boston
see.
250
I
because
see.
I applied for the grant on
Right.
behalf of the
I
city.
didn't hear about that part of it, but now that you say it, I do remember that.
Yes,
Suzanne.
yes, so
I
I
think
will
he was just
email
trying to give
Alex.
us, he was just trying to give us a flavor, I think.
Because we need to get going on this promotion because the money's gonna
Yeah.
go away as of June 2025.
Right.
Yep.
And I have to actually put in a report to the state by the end of the month. So it would be nice if I was informed of what I'm doing for the city. So, all right. Recording, I'll be emailing Alex.
right.
Thank you, Nat.
Noted. So I'll add something about that, about how the city is working on it in partnership
Okay.
with you guys, and I think that works. And then marker program, which we've been discussing. I think that we've identified some collaborations that we need for this to work. And I think that we will need to identify what a budget might look like. For at least for the creation of those plaques. Depending on we could put a number, like Dave O'Donnell was saying 250 plaques for the 250th. And that's fine. That's a good ask, maybe. And we'll just need to do some research. And so what that would cost, what it would look like, which departments would need to get involved.
Yeah. Each plaque is going to be a multiple of thousands of dollars. So 250 might be a little ambitious. I mean, maybe not. It may be that we can find the funds for that.
No, I'm taking notes and I will update this.
Yeah.
Okay, for the walking trails, it's not just departmental collaborations, and budget and staff, but like we said, partnering with just local organizations, universities for that research. I don't know, feel like maybe I'm missing something there, but we also have like parades, reenactments, festivals. I don't think you can really put a number on that. I think that's hard to say.
Yeah, I mean, Hennessy, I think the complicated thing there is that it like bumps into the question of how the city is working with partners, right? So is the exercise here to identify things that partner entities are planning, and then the city can lean in and support those, either with helping to direct some funding to them, or leaning in to provide more capacity for some of the things that you know, when you get tens of thousands of people descending upon you, suddenly you need to think about security and road closures and things that are not like necessarily in the sweet spot of every organization. So there's some piece of it that's that, and then I think we probably need to identify whether there's a set of orphaned programs where the city just needs to be the lead. And I you know, like we've talked about the Independence Day thing. Like the city is the lead on the 4th of July for the downtown celebration. And we probably want to flag a few more where the city's the lead, but like also how can we turn that into something that is like where partners can pick it up and do it in other neighborhoods.
Hi, everyone. Sorry I'm late. Nat, I appreciate your point there. And I think it's a capacity thing with the city too. Like our
Yeah,
events
of
team is
course.
very, very small, right? So it takes all of us to get our one event done. So, but I think there's ways we can help leading up to, especially with the permitting process, especially with, I think a lot of those questions that you're talking about with like security and road closures and parking, those are all handled through the public event process, right? So anyone that's doing a major event has to do that. But then it comes into where like it's very costly. And how
Right.
does the city maybe absorb some of those costs as a way to help? I agree with you 100%. And I think that needs to be ironed out.
Yeah, and Amy, I see you there. I hadn't realized you'd already joined, or I would have deferred to you on that. But yeah, I recognize that a key challenge here is capacity, and part of this is just like we want to articulate what would be needed in order to do
Mhm.
something that we could, you know,
We-
that meets the scale of what was
Yep. And I think that,
of
and
what
I think
we're
we can
conceptualizing.
definitely be a conduit to helping get that ironed out.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, for what the ordinance says that the commission is supposed to do in terms of recommendations. I mean, these are things, goals that we'd like to see, but I guess the recommendations that we make have to do around, hey, if these things happen, we think that it would be great if the city supported this department in a specific capacity, because that's really, I think, the charge of the commission and what we're able to do.
Wow. I think I shut everybody up. Sorry, guys. Keep going.
It's my screen went black. I'm trying to find you guys. Okay,
Way
so
to ruin the party. Sorry.
no, it's me. I'm literally, I can't see you guys anymore. My screen went totally black. So I'm trying to work on this and you guys got quiet on me. I thought you were gone. But yeah, so I think that's more about advocating for you guys and saying we think that this department needs this kind of support. What we have after this is engagement with the arts, a series of programming from April 2025 to August 2026, engaging local businesses and official beverages. So I mean, I think we can identify that we should be engaging for arts. We should be engaging with arts and culture, engaging with local museums and other institutions, and amplifying the, you know, projects and things that they have already going on. My gosh, I still cannot see you guys.
Yeah,
One
kind of see. I just want to flag while we're on this arts one. I know because I've been involved in some of the conceptual conversations that the MFA is planning a reinstallation of the entry galleries to the Art of the Americas wing, which is actually a pretty exciting project as they've conceived of it. And they see that as their 250th contribution. And we probably should reach out and get in dialogue with them just to have a better handle on what they're doing and how we might be able to intersect it with other things.
Okay, good to know.
Hmm.
If you have a contact that you think is best for me to, you know, for us to connect with, that would be great.
Yeah, that's great. How about I connect you by email, I'll check in with them and ask who would be the right person, and then I'll connect you by email.
Yeah, that'd
And
be
I
perfect.
think guys, once we get our website up and we get that calendar that folks can add to, I think that's the goal. I think that's gonna be a great way for us to promote everything and to have everything in one bucket. So that A, we can promote events like this, right? And it's all under the 250 umbrella. And B, we can see where there may be some competing events and then maybe work with folks so that we can work together instead of scheduling things at the same time, which would, take away from each event. So that's a great point. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean we have to give financial, I think the MFA has a handle on what they want to do, but how do we help promote it for them, right? And how do we umbrella all of these things into what Boston's doing for 250?
Yeah. I agree. That's great. And then I'll just go quickly through the other ones that are from the other subcommittees. So timelines, archives, and curricula, they are talking about a history database, but that's less an actual database and more a compiling of historical resources for people to have access to, like a quick here's what you need to know about what we have, a quick like guide, because there are, like Massachusetts Historical Society, they just launched, I think, history.org, if I'm not mistaken, and it's like a database that they're partnering with, I think it was William and Mary, so that other institutions like build out landing pages for students who want to do a research topic. They can go to history.org and they can click on something about, like, let's say if they want to do a project about the United States or about whatever, they can click on that and it'll send them to institutions that are doing something about, that have information on that. So that's great. That's something that we had discussed. But we are working with BPL to like work through some data aggregation. So that's that. The Boston neighborhood stories, yeah, I think that's another one that they really would like to have, because it's a great archive. It's a great, way to engage with the community and make an oral history project. So there's but who is the person that's going to be, creating these questions that we might ask people, doing the kind of work that the neighborhood stories did, which is it was incredible work about the changes in the architecture, and things like that. So it's a larger commitment, that, I mean, to be fair, it seems like it lives with BPL and the Office of Historic Preservation. It's just an issue with capacity and, execution. If we did get a budget for some commemoration stuff, we could do a lot, just in the department for a lot of the things that we have been discussing. They want data, resources, archives collection and curation, as well as digitizing archives, which is huge. I think it's all of these things need to be digitized. And it's a great way to start making things accessible and available, not just in person, but online, which would help with the curriculum planning for some teachers that, want to have these archival resources available, and it opens up a lot for students. They want language access and other accessibility accommodations. Obviously, that goes without saying. And then museum curations, Boston Public Library exhibits, and BPS curriculums, internships. So I think that just means we need to start talking to museums and other organizations a bit more, we being me. Or inviting them, to our subcommittee meetings, just to, for them to say, hey, here's what we're working on, here's where we'd like support, or here's where we'd like for you guys to, help market. I think that's something that Timelines, Archives, and Curricula is doing. They've invited Boston Public School to come speak to them today to talk about like what they work on and how the subcommittee can provide support. So maybe that's something we can talk about. Yeah, Suzanne.
I had a meeting with PBS yesterday, their social studies team,
Mm.
and they have their own 250th initiatives that they're trying to roll out. Of course, they have to get funding for it, but I feel like this is something that could be part of this. you know, because we're talking about other entities doing their own 250th activities. So how do we gather all the entities that are doing 250th programming and activities and
We're just gonna have to do outreach, like, as much information as you all have and as much information as I can gather from other organizations. And maybe you guys share what you have with me so that I can start compiling a list of organizations that are working on something that is 250th, even if it's a longer term project and not a singular event. I think that that might just be the best way to go so that we can start, figuring out the complete landscape of these commemorative efforts, which I'm sure we know a good chunk individually, but I think if we start compiling that, we can see what it looks like.
Hennessy, I know that we've met with Esther and Amari and previously a number of times. I don't have an answer to this, but maybe you do. Has there been any updates on any of the activities that Everyone 250 has been collecting from the community?
I mean, I can check. And we can check back in with them. Esther shared with me their like spreadsheet of events that they had for the 250th, but a lot of them were just Ref 250 events. And I know that the city has some events that they're collecting as well. Whenever I get something, I'll send it to that city calendar, or not the calendar, but the sheet. So, and I think that the city also has all of the Rev 250 events. But for example, Bunker Hill 250 had like a huge list of events that they've been that the organizations that are working inside of that umbrella have been planning. And so I sent that along to the city so that we have that, so that we know that these things exist. And now I'm working with Chelsea Creek, and with Chelsea, the city, to start identifying like what are the events that they're going to be doing, and it's all one day, so it's just what are the events going to be for the 24th of May, so that we can collect that information and make sure we have it and aren't interfering or
And
clashing.
both you and Amy mentioned website. Hi, Amy. Who's is Do It working on a website page?
Well, yeah, it's a work in progress, Suzanne. I don't have a lot to report on it other than it's a goal.
Okay,
And then
right.
to get that up as quickly as possible.
Goals are good.
That's a goal.
Thanks, Amy.
I mean, we can kind of discuss what we think should be on that, or like if there's social media involved or who exactly. I think should be a collaborative effort, that website, the maintenance of that website. But yeah, it is in progress. We'll also probably need social media. It's not there, but we'll need it. Yeah. So that's what we have. And then this is legislation and preservation tools. Their policy, obviously, Article 80 zoning code policies, mitigation for demolition, structure for demolition, um, collaboration for things like naturally occurring affordable housing, of office to housing in terms of the viability of historic preservation as a climate action tool. And they want economic studies as well. So I talk about some of our successes, which is that we are working on this ordinance, some relationships that we're building, and I'm still working on the challenges and the next steps. So that's where I'm at. I'm hoping that after today I can, really get through and put some meat into this report. So, okay, that's what I have there. I'll
Great
stop.
work, Hennessy.
That's a lot of work, so
Yeah.
thank you. And let us know how we can be helpful to you. Are you planning to circulate a draft and get feedback from commissioners?
Yeah, my hope, because it's been busy, guys. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, so my hope was to finish it this week, hopefully today, so that I can circulate it out to you guys before our meeting, next week.
Yeah, well, it is readily apparent that it's a heavy lift, so please reach out if there's anything that we can do to help, even with generating copy, whatever.
Yeah.
Happy to help as I can.
Okay, that sounds great. I'm hoping that I can get something out and ready for you guys to at least comment on. And then we'll talk about it more at the meeting, you know, and who we might want to make sure that it sees this and provides feedback from the city, because I think that'll be very important. Yeah. Okay, I think that's all we had. So if there's, you know, any more comments, I'll open up the floor, but if not,
Just wanted to report, you know, just to close this loop, that I did email the city about the branding and CC to Hennessy, you, Hennessy, and Kathy. So that's already gone out while we've been meeting, so hopefully we can get that going.
perfect.
And we're here to help, Hennessy, so whatever you need.
Thank you guys. All right. I don't think there's enough of us to
Yeah,
have to. So I'll
Yeah.
just let you guys go.
thank you.
Okay,
Thank you so much for all of the work you're doing, Hennessy. This
Alright.
is
yeah,
Thank you
doing a
phenomenal.
guys.
great job. Thanks,
All right.
Thanks
Hennessy.
all. Sorry I was
Thanks,
late.
everybody.
No worries. Thank you, Amy, for
Good
coming.
to see you all. Bye.
Bye.